There was a time when Major League Soccer didn't allow draws. If a match was tied, a player would line up 35 yards out and had 5 seconds to beat the goalkeeper one-on-one, like a hockey breakaway. That wasn't a fun fact from some obscure indoor league. That was MLS. And it's just the start of how strange this league's rulebook history actually is. I've gone through every rule change, old and new, and I'm going to walk you through all of it. So here's the background. After the U.S. hosted the 1994 World Cup, FIFA required America to actually build a proper top-flight league. That became MLS, launched in 1996. And the people running it had a real problem. Soccer was still a foreign sport to most American fans, and they were worried draws, especially, would feel boring to an audience used to baseball extra innings and overtime in football and basketball. So they didn't just tweak the rules. They rewrote a chunk of them. That's where the shootout came from, straight from the old North American Soccer League. Every tied match went to this breakaway format. 5 seconds, 35 yards out. A shootout win was worth 1 point. Losing got you nothing. It ran from 1996 all the way to 1999. And honestly, watching footage of it now, it looks like a completely different sport. And the clock wasn't normal either. Instead of counting up to 90 minutes, the way every other league in the world does, MLS matches counted down from 45 minutes each half. The referee would stop it for major delays. And the second it hit zero, play just stopped. No stoppage time tacked on the end the way we're used to now. Before any of that, there was a league called the USISL, used basically as a test lab between the '94 World Cup and MLS launching. They tried bigger goals just to force more scoring. They tried giving out penalty shots for teams that racked up too many fouls. And they ran a discontinuous 60-minute clock split into two 30-minute halves. Some of that never made it anywhere near MLS. But it shows how much American soccer was willing to experiment with right from the start. So what killed the shootout and the countdown clock? Not fan complaints, really. It was international pressure. MLS wanted to attract real talent from outside the U.S. and be taken seriously by the rest of the football world. And clubs and players elsewhere just didn't recognize this version of the game. By 1999, the league started phasing those rules out. It took close to a decade to fully line up with the standard laws of the game everyone else plays by. Here's something I didn't expect going into this. The shootout never actually disappeared completely. MLS's development league, MLS Next Pro, brought back a version of it. A regulation win is worth 3 points. A tie gives both teams 1 point no matter what. Then whoever wins the shootout gets an extra point on top. The league's own leadership has said flat out, they're using this lower level as a testing ground to see if ideas like this could eventually work their way back up to MLS itself. Okay, that's the history. Now let's talk about what's actually changed recently, because MLS has been busy. In 2025, they introduced something called cash for player trades. Before this, clubs couldn't just pay cash to sign a player away from another MLS team. Now they can, with no real limit. And that cash can convert into allocation money, which clubs use to build their roster. The whole point is to stop losing rising players to transfers overseas by making it more worthwhile for them to just move to another club inside the league instead. They also gave clubs a second contract buyout option, so teams have more room to move on from a player who isn't working out. And there's a new choice teams have to make called the roster construction model. Basically, a club picks between two structures, either 3 designated players and 3 U22 initiative players, or 2 designated players, 4 U22 players, plus an extra $1 million in allocation money. It sounds technical, but it's a real strategic decision every front office now has to make. Then in 2026, MLS removed the limits on those cash trades entirely. Age restrictions on loans got dropped too, and the transfer window itself got pushed back. The summer window now runs into September for the first time in nearly 20 years. It lines MLS up much closer with when the big European leagues are doing their business, so clubs can chase informed players later in the year right before the playoff push. There's also a smaller change that matters a lot. If you support one of the 3 Canadian teams, Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver used to follow Canada Soccer's registration calendar, which didn't always match up with the rest of the league. FIFA approved a special request, so those clubs now follow the same U.S. soccer registration periods as everyone else. Small fix, but it removes a real scheduling headache. But none of what I've just covered is actually the biggest change. That's coming in 2027. MLS is permanently switching from its spring to fall calendar The same one it's used since 1996 to a summer to spring calendar. That's the same setup the Premier League and most of the world's top leagues use. To make that jump without just breaking the season in half, they're running a short transition year first. A 14-game sprint season, way shorter than the usual 34 games, just to sort out who qualifies for continental competition before the new calendar properly kicks in. So why does any of this matter if you're just watching the games? Because it explains a lot about how MLS operates compared to a league like the Premier League. Over there, most of what changes year to year is about referees and VAR and how the actual laws of the game get applied. Here, it's almost the opposite. MLS already plays by the same on-field rules as everyone else. What keeps changing is the business layer underneath it. How rosters get built, how transfers work, how the whole season is structured. That's a genuinely different kind of rulebook to follow as a fan. And honestly, there's a thread connecting all of it. From that 1996 shootout to the calendar switch coming in 2027. MLS keeps trying to figure out how to build something that works for American sports fans without completely cutting itself off from the rest of the football world. Sometimes that meant inventing a rule nobody else on earth used. Sometimes it means quietly aligning itself closer to Europe every single year. So next time someone brings up that old MLS shootout like it's just a funny bit of trivia, you'll actually know the whole story behind why it existed and why it got scrapped. And you'll understand exactly what's changing behind the scenes in this league right now, heading into one of the biggest shifts in its history. If you want more of this, breaking down the actual rules behind the sport instead of just the highlights, stick around. Subscribe the Football Blueprint Reporter, and I'll see you in the next one. Copa America New Rules.